We're interrupting this podcast to ask you a very important question. Have you had your Hershey's? When you need to brighten up your day, put a smile on your face with the classic creamy texture and pure milk chocolate flavor of Hershey's milk chocolate. Whether you're eating it on the go, breaking off a few pieces for s'mores night, or just treating yourself to something sweet, Hershey's milk chocolate checks all the boxes. Shop for Hershey's milk chocolate now at a store near you, found wherever candy is sold.
Glad Force Flex Max Strength now has bags with a 2 times stronger top for over-the-top strength. Like the kind of over-the-top strength you need when, breaks your bowl of buffalo chicken dip. Glad Force Flex Max Strength. Strong enough for all of life's garbage. 2 times stronger top versus 13-gallon Force Flex bags.
Here it is, the long-awaited debut of the FunBelt podcast. I am Dusty Thibodeau, owner of Warhawk Report, covering ULM for the Rivals Network. And join me, as always, is...
Jeremy Harper with HowRazor.com and God, I don't even know what I'm working on. HowRazor.com and College Football News.
And Ben Moore, 24/7.
Guys, we're finally doing it. We have the Sun Belt, the Fun Belt, and we're talking it, we're tackling it, we're going crazy with it. This past week, it was Sun Belt Conference Media Days, the poll's out. Of course, it is Coastal Carolina, the Fighting Teal, favored again. Give me your thoughts there on that top 10.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good to jump right in. It was interesting to see. Certainly, no surprise there in the West at all. With Louisiana, but in the East, somebody doesn't like Coastal Carolina because it seemed to me that they got at least one second place vote. Got to tie there with App State, and it's going to be interesting. I think all season long to see what the residual is with Coastal, knowing what they did last season, how they handle success and go from there. But, Georgia State there, tied for after the tie, they're in third place. They received a second place vote by somebody as well. And we may have to sniff them out here at the FunBelt podcast to see who voted second. It wasn't me. I can confirm that. No, I think, not a whole lot of shocks that jumped out to me specifically. But how about you, Jeremy? Anything jump out?
Well, definitely, I've never seen a shocking Sun Belt preseason poll. It always seems to shake out the way you expect. One thing I didn't really expect was Arkansas State being put number 2, especially considering that Arkansas State didn't get any preseason Sun Belt players on the preseason Sun Belt teams. So there's this. It's either this idea that the Sun Belt West is kind of weak this year, or a bit of an unknown, and that's why Arkansas State gets a vote and gets up into second place, or simply that somebody thinks Butch Jones is going to have a little bit of magic to get these players running. As terms of the West, I kind of agree with this sort of reluctance to get behind Coastal Carolina. It's not because they didn't have a great season last year. I just feel like there's a good chance of sort of having a bit of a hangover after all that success last year. I think Chadwell, during his interview, touched on that several times. And some of the reporters actually asked him, how do you keep these guys motivated? How do you keep it going? And I'll be surprised if they can duplicate that success. I always feel like Appalachian State is so strong, so mentally strong in that area. And then you have some guys right behind Appalachian State, right behind Coastal Carolina that are poised to make some noise in that part of the bracket. So that's going to be an exciting thing to watch out there in the East. And the West is just still such a mystery to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the top teams in the conference there, with it being Coastal Carolina in the East, Louisiana Lafayette in the West, I think those are the given. I think that they will actually get to meet this year for a conference championship. Beyond that, I really think that it's wide open. I think ULM is going to be kind of in the bottom there of the West, but will surprise somebody. I don't know who that team will be, but they will beat somebody that you're like, God, how did they pull that off? Other than that, I think Troy's still another year away from being able to compete and being able to be back to that Troy of old, as we were talking about, Jeremy, where they are kind of the favorite in the East. I think they're the up-and-coming team, but I think that they need at least one more year. And also, I think that South Alabama, new head coach again there with Kane Womack, I think that they are the X factor. No one knows anything about South Alabama and the Jags. So that is our first mission. We got to find some South Alabama representation for this show.
I'm sure we could dig up somebody from South Alabama to help us out. Like I was mentioning before, there's a guy named Craig Stevenson who does the beat there. We could probably get him on the show, and he can let us know who or what's going on in South Alabama. But I would like to know Ben's sleeper picks. My sleeper picks, though, for this year, I have two picks, and they always, both teams seem to always be on the cusp of doing something really good in the Sun Belt, and then for whatever reason they just can't put it together. But after listening to the coaches and kind of looking over their team, I feel like both South Alabama with Womack and Texas State with Spavital, I think both those teams have a real chance of doing some damage in their divisions. And I'd like to hear what Ben thinks about who in the West and who in the East is going to cause some problems.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing what the all transfer portal team does. And I know Texas State, that was a topic of conversation as we saw at Sunbelt Media Day, that he really just didn't want to take any young guys, and even addressed that and said, "Hey, look, we were going to be one of the youngest teams in the country if we went ahead and signed 20 to 25 guys." That were coming from the high school ranks. So I agree with you. I'm interested to see how Troy reacts. They always seem to be the pick to click with a lot of folks, media, and some of the preseason magazines and things like that. They lost a lot of games close last season. And if you looked at the previous season back in 2019, Coastal Carolina did the same thing. I think they lost 4 games by a touchdown or less. So they, certainly, I'm not predicting a Troy, to repeat what Coastal did potentially, but they certainly have a whole lot of talent offensively. Have the defensive, preseason defensive player of the year there, on the defense as well. So I'm interested, and I'd like to see what Troy does. But the East is just murderer's row, as we've talked about before. With App and Coastal, and even as we mentioned as well, Georgia State getting some love after having 19 starters back as well. If they can survive September, I think they could be a sleeper pick around the league.
Yeah,
Am I the only one brave enough to say that Coastal does not win the East this year?
No, I'm brave enough to say that.
All right,
I'll put my marker on that.
The feathery mullet doesn't win the East. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Dude, those were some sweet mullets by the entire Coastal Carolina delegation there that was in New Orleans. All of them had a great mullet. They all looked beautiful, flowing in the wind. But I'm sorry, they'll probably be in New Orleans for the New Orleans Bowl. Not meaning that they're conference champions, by the way. Just picked for the New Orleans Bowl.
I'll have to take a little bit of umbrage with Chadwell's mullet. I thought that was kind of a weak mullet. It looked all lispy and light, and I felt like he still has some work to do on that mullet. I could be alone in the room on that, but I feel like he could do a little bit better.
You still got a month. You can grow it out a little bit more, and then flare it out. I expect some work here. That's what fall camp's for, Jeremy.
He's got the summer mullet. He needs to transition into fall mullet. I can see that. But one thing about Spavital and what he's doing is that I have a theory, Ben and Dusty, about Spavital, and I'd be interested in what you thought about that. I think he's looking at some of these young teams, guys like Georgia State, guys like Coastal Carolina, and even Appalachian State and Georgia Southern, who have come in and to the Sun Belt and found success right away. And Texas State just seems to be falling behind, or at least staying in the basement the entire time. I feel like Spavital is seeing maybe a window of opportunity closing, maybe not getting the recruits that he wanted to make that move. And I'm wondering if he's using that transfer portal to jumpstart that program and to make some noise, maybe not necessarily for Texas State, but maybe for his own career. Am I misreading that?
No, I think you hit it right on the nose there, that he is doing whatever he can to try to get the Bobcats back to being relevant. I don't think they've ever finished higher than the middle of the pack there in the Sun Belt Conference. And so maybe this is his attempt to try to be that foot in the rear to push them to the higher end of the Sun Belt West. I don't understand how San Marcos, Texas, with Texas State, can struggle as much as they do when they have all the resources. They have a fantastic campus. They have all the great resources. They have money there to make sure that things are kept up to date. I don't understand how that job has gone from Dennis Franchione, the guy that resurrected and was great at Texas A&M, to being this job where you're finding yourselves at the lower end, really not too far ahead of ULM in that preseason poll.
Well, here's my thought on this, and Ben, I think you'll agree with this too, because this is not the attitude of Georgia State. It's not the attitude of Georgia Southern or Appalachian State. I felt like what Texas State had a bad case of was FCS mentality. They brought in Withers, who by all accounts was a great FCS coach, but I felt like he addressed things in a very small way. Like he never really thought in a big time manner. And maybe that's what Spavital is going to do for Texas State is bring a more professional, high end mentality. And I think if you talk to some people at Texas State, they'll also say some of the top brass is still in that FCS mentality. I think I remember seeing one story where their team doctor was also a PE coach or something like that. They just wasn't putting in some of the money into the program that was really necessary to take it to that next level. So maybe Jake is the guy to make that happen.
Well, and let's call it what it is. I mean, the state of Texas, you have to win in order to gain folks' attention. There's so many programs and quality programs in that state, as we've seen rise. In the last few years, we saw Houston rise, with Kevin Sumlin, and really kind of grab 4-star, high 3-star, high 4-star kids from that city and go and dominate there. We'll see if Spavital, this works. It certainly couldn't have been worse. All right. I mean, he's only won 5 games, I think 4 games in Sun Belt play in 2 seasons. So, you give it a shot there and try to see if you can try to build something and then try to go and, attack the, 2022 class. But I mean, your point's a great one, Jeremy. I mean, let's be honest too. If the admins don't see a whole lot of effort or winning, they may blow him out anyway. So he may be able to say, hey, look, I tried something different, and either it works or it doesn't. But credit to him for trying something a little bit different and utilizing the transfer portal, and we'll see if they'll be tougher this season.
So Dusty said that he went ahead and kind of like me, I ended up sitting into the Sun Belt Conference for about 7 hours. Even with their audio problems that they had trouble with at the beginning of the thing. And I think Dusty said he went back and reviewed a lot of the coaches' interviews. Who do you guys think came in with the most swagger? I know Chadwell did. Chadwell seemed like he felt pretty good about his team and felt good about where he was. But who else do you felt really brought the thunder?
Yeah, I think, Lunsford did a okay job down there. Maybe I'm a little homerish. I think Bowden, considering that all the news broke about his father, prayers up for the legend there at Bobby Bowden. I felt like he handled it kind of well. I think he could have done a lot better and said a lot more, but he was and if you watch that interview, he was kind of distant and wasn't really there. But I feel like the things he said the right things, hyped up the conference, tried to put a spin on a team that he inherited that was 0-10 last year, and really kind of set the expectations like, it's going to be kind of rough, guys, but we're going to do it this year.
I thought Terry Bowden did a good job considering what his dad is going through. But
100%.
I thought the guy that really projected a lot of confidence was Sean Elliott. He just seemed to feel like his team was ready to go. And I was wondering what you thought about that, Ben. I know that you're very close to Georgia State, and I thought Sean Elliott was just presenting himself as a guy who had a team behind him.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. There were so many things when he came and took over this program. 5 years ago, you can't do this, you can't do that. They've never done this here, and he's kind of embraced that. And now, really, I can tell you certainly he's not looking for excuses. He's looking to basically go and put the mark on the program and kind of take that next step. And mention basically you got your place kicker back, got your punter, got your starting quarterback. There's been certainly some quarterback changeover in the league, but all the starters are back. You're coming off the program's first ever back-to-back winning seasons, going to bowl games and 3 of the last 4 seasons as well. So he's super confident guy. Obviously going to be upbeat, knowing how good as well. I mean, his old position group that he coached at the University of South Carolina is the offensive line, and they're all back. Brought one of his big guys with them. So they're excited. I know they're looking and aiming pretty high and want to go make a statement as well against 2 Power Fives there in North Carolina and Auburn on the road in September.
One thing I want to ask you too, Ben, because I know that the rivalry between Georgia State and Georgia Southern, it can be so fantastically caustic at times. I don't have any feeling for Georgia Southern this year. I don't know if Dusty does either, but because we were talking about earlier teams that we don't have a big feeling for. Georgia Southern is one of those teams for me. They've got the new quarterback, Shea Wertz is gone. They always do that triple option anyway, which I still don't completely, fully 100% understand sometimes. Do you get any sense of where Georgia Southern is this year? What part of the solar system will they be in the Sun Belt?
I can tell you expectations are always very, very high down in Statesboro. I mean, this is a program that won 6 FCS national titles and still hold on to those 6 flags and very tightly. And what I've kind of learned living in that same state and interacting with a lot of their alums, I try to let them know that FCS trophies and flags don't really matter in FBS.
Yes.
And it's tough to move on from that. But as you guys were mentioning, kind of the FCS mentality, Georgia Southern, in a lot of ways, is that same way. They have embraced those traditions. They, I believe, back in 2019, were last in attendance reported in the Sun Belt as well. They have a very passionate base. It's not enormous because you lose a lot in the state of Georgia to the University of Georgia, and then I think you have, I believe the number is 6 FBS programs basically within driving distance of your campus within about a 3.5-hour radius. But no, I mean it is a change at quarterback. They were expecting James Graham, the former highly rated guy who came from Georgia Tech, was kind of in that turnover from Georgia Tech going from triple option to the now spread under Jeff Collins. They grabbed him in and then moved him to wide receiver, which was kind of startling for sure. And they've struggled on the offensive line as well. I don't think their offensive line is very good. And as you mentioned, they run triple option. If your offensive line's not very good and you're getting blasted in the front 7, it could be a very long year down in Statesboro. I saw their win total, I believe, is at 3.5 by the folks out there in Vegas. And I can tell you there'll be fire in the city, pitchforks in Statesboro if that's the case, if there's 3 or 4 wins down there.
Is it bad that I'm jealous of that you could actually have 3 wins this upcoming season?
Dusty is begging for 3 wins at ULM. He wants ULM. He said to me they were going to double their win total in Monroe. And I had a little brain fart, and I said, well, wait, how many wins did ULM have last year? And it's 0.
Yeah. So you cannot get any worse. Guaranteed.
Dusty, when I was in school at Arkansas State back in the early 90s, we had just entered FBS. And I witnessed 4 of possibly the worst years of football a man could possibly watch. It was constantly seeing Arkansas State with players that looked like they were high school players matched up against giants. So I do understand when a team that you love goes through a long period of just ineptitude. And I hope Bowden's the guy that can drag him out of it. Bowden, like you said, he brought some moxie to the Sun Belt proceedings. Uh, and in fact, that actually went as so far as to declare the Sun Belt the best Group of Five conference. And I was going to ask both of you, what do you think? Is the Sun Belt poised to be the best, at least the best football conference in the Group of Five?
I think coming into the year, no doubt. I mean, you have two teams that will likely be in the top 20, not even just the top 25, but top 20 of the preseason rankings. You had last year the Coastal Carolina able to pull off the last minute miracle there against Brigham Young, the game that was scheduled kind of on the fly there. 3-0 against the Big 12, which that's a whole nother topic. But 3-0 against the Big 12 here. Yeah, they are the G5 conference. I'll say it.
I was looking back at the end of this year. I looked back at some of one of the things that the Sun Belt did, and one of the things I'm beginning to see is reflected in the coaching that is coming up. It used to be that the Sun Belt was a place where either old coaches ready to retire came, and they would just kind of get their paychecks, or there would be a lot of unproven FCS guys that would come in, and they may do well, they may not, but it didn't matter because they kind of would float in the ether. Now it seems to me the Sun Belt is a very hot coaching place. We've got some pretty good name coaches out there, and then we've had some coaches like Chadwell and Napier, who both had opportunities to take off for bigger jobs over the offseason. And they said, no, we're going to stick it. We're going to stick with this conference. We're going to stick with our teams. So I don't know if you can call the Sun Belt the best. I think that's a matter of conjecture, a matter of perspective. But I definitely don't think you can look at the Sun Belt anymore and go, oh, yeah, that's the worst conference in college football. You just can't do that anymore.
Let me ask you, would you have taken the Tennessee job, though, if you were Napier?
Yeah. And here's why. Ben, I don't mean to step on your toes here. But Hudspeth spent way too long with the Cajuns. He had all those years where he did well, and he brought the team to bowl games and to conference championships. And he kept sticking around, and he kind of missed his window. He missed his opportunity. So I guess a business part of me says, even though Tennessee's a big hot mess right now, it's still SEC. It's still a national brand. So I think that's a very tempting job to take.
Yeah, I agree totally, and I think it's a hard. You saw it there, in Jonesboro, Jeremy. I mean, you had Blake Anderson, who probably had opportunities, when he was riding, pretty high there. I know his buyout was pretty high there, just because Jonesboro seemed to lose a coach every offseason there for a bit there. But I think when if that's your goal, and if you want to go jump in the SEC, and we look at it, from the outside, saying, hey, you know what, it may be smart to wait, but I'm just convinced Billy Napier's waiting for one specific job. I don't know what that is exactly, but we know that he's waiting for one specific, because he's played footsie with several schools now, and nothing has come to fruition. I think he was a candidate for both of the openings, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and never made it to the finish line or even the finalist, from what I could tell. So very, very interesting, and to the benefit for those folks in Lafayette, because he's built, I believe, probably top to bottom, one of the most talented rosters, certainly in the Sun Belt, that I've seen in quite a while.
Yeah, it looks pretty tight. But I do feel like, that the coaching in the Sun Belt, when you get guys that get these big offers, like Napier, well, like I'm sure Sean Clark's about to get, like I'm sure all these guys are about to get, that's just good for the Sun Belt. It does make the turnover a little frustrating, but it shines that light on the conference, and it shows that good things are happening in the Sun Belt. Arkansas State, in a tired, we say it's famously, but we get tired of the story about having 5 coaches in 5 years. But it was good for Arkansas State. The exposure, the new perspectives that were brought in, the talent that was brought in, that actually elevated Arkansas State. And maybe that's just a good formula for the Sun Belt in general.
It was Sunbelt Media Days this past week, as we said. Did anybody else see it? There was a Keith Gill sighting, and he came out and he took the podium. He talked about the Sunbelt Conference, how great it was, the 80% bowl win percentage, all the hype. Signed a new ESPN deal that over half the games will now be on an ESPN platform. And I think that's the key thing that most people don't realize when they're trying to flip through the ESPNUs, the Ochos, and everything else, that it's not necessarily going to be on your traditional cable TV. A lot of it's going to be on ESPN3, but I don't know about y'all. I don't even have cable. And so the ESPN3 platform is where I'm going to go to watch the game because I might not be sitting at home. I might be out somewhere around the town, but still want to be able to catch that game or the highlights or anything like that. So to me, that's a bigger deal than being on a traditional ESPN platform.
Arkansas, we have 2 FBS teams. Unlike you guys have so many in both Georgia and ULM. We have 2. So we get a lot of Arkansas fans here. And there is absolute panic amongst the Arkansas fan base if Arkansas isn't on ESPN or the SEC network. They don't know what to do. They don't even know how to get on the ESPN3. That's like a mystery to them. They just flip out. They call it on the radio and like, how do I get on the ESPN3? Oh my God, what do I have to do? So we just kind of laugh at them and say, God, it's not rocket science. Figure it out. I love the ESPN's relationship with the Sun Belt. Yeah, sometimes you get someone that it's gotten actually better in my opinion, but you used to get a lot of announcers that seem to talk about other games more than the game that they were watching. But I feel like that's improved. And I love the ESPN relationship.
So what I heard, Jeremy, was that the Sugar Bear fans are far better than Arkansas fans.
Yes, indeed. They're a lot more savvy. I can give you that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too that I took away from Gil's comments were they're taking some inventory away from other conferences, other Group of 5 conferences, and that's obviously was we know that the situation last year with COVID and games getting shuffled, and we know some of the Power 5 teams didn't start till much later, so it afforded the Sun Belt opportunities. But $26 million is an eye-popping number. I mean, that was one of the things that really jumped out to me, and they're going to be able to bump a Conference USA down the pecking order, potentially even the MAC. And the thing that also jumped out as well, as someone who goes to games, some of these games are going to be on Saturdays across the league. You're not going to have, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're going to have some of those, I think, this year. But, I think you're going to see some of that kind of slide slide back a little bit. And Commissioner Gill talked about that these games are going to be on Saturday, and trying to find that, that medium to bring folks in and bring them back, and certainly hope that folks are coming back to the game in full force as more things are opening back up.
And I think that the Sun Belt did a great job of that last year, being one of the forefronts of saying we're playing. While everyone was kind of up in the air of COVID going, I don't know, it depends on our states, depends on the schools, the Sun Belt knew truthfully that a lot of their members depended on that revenue, depended on those games happening for the athletic programs to continue to even be in existence. So they were really in a fight for their lives. And so I think that it's a good step forward. Also, the one thing that Gil said was that this year there's no postponement, no redoing of games, rescheduling of games. It's if you got the Rona, you ain't playing, and it's a forfeit. And I think that would have solved a lot of the bitterness and a lot of the Twitter trolling that you see between Lafayette and Coastal Carolina. Because even though Coastal Carolina got that win in the regular season, I have zero doubts in my mind the Cajuns would have been hoisting the good old FunBelt over their heads at the end of that championship game.
That could absolutely be true. But I'll tell you one thing. One thing I think what Gill is doing, and I think I've heard a couple other conferences saying the same thing about no postponements, forfeits. I think that's a big push to get these to get these conferences to push their teams to get the vaccine. I think that's just one way they're trying to protect the conferences, because when you postpone a game, when you have to cancel a game or whatever, it just costs everybody a lot of money. And it costs TV money. It costs those contracts money. So I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing all that. But to go back a little bit further than what you said, Dusty, it was the group of five that saved college football last year. It was the group of five in Big 12. All those six conferences said, well, wait, I didn't want to, maybe Mountain West didn't, but they said, we're going to get out there, we're going to play football, we're going to be your canary in the coal mine. We're going to go out there and play. We're going to give the people what they want, which is some college football, and we're going to take the risks. And there's nothing that made me angrier last year than to see the Big Ten just kind of come in with a 6-game schedule, and all of a sudden Ohio State's supposed to be in the playoffs. That just made me angry. I just felt like you had all these teams that played a close to a full slate as possible, including the Sun Belt, and then we still have to make our bones for a team that only played 6 games. I didn't get that. Ben, you're like in the hotbed of Atlanta. What was the idea behind? Did anybody feel the same way about that, or am I just screaming at the clouds?
No, I'm down here in SEC and ACC country, and they were the exact same way. You have a tremendous amount of Big Ten alums down here that have got tired of shoveling 3.5 feet of snow during the winter. So you see plenty of big O's and big M's on mailboxes and things like that. But they admit it too, and I think you even saw that if you had watched some of the ESPN coverage. Of the Sun Belt is, they had Bill Connolly on, and he was talking about specifically that the group of five almost has to fight this battle of perception of you need multiple years of success,
Yeah.
which that's not what you hear. The Power Five programs get. Oh, well, yeah, they beat 3 teams, so automatically, like it was laughable at what. And to your point, I mean, Ohio State, I think they were in the top 5 and didn't play a game for a month. That
Yeah.
the whole month of September, but yet they were still holding on to their 5th spot. I don't know how that gets fixed, short of basically just not ranking anybody, I guess, until the first or second week. Getting past some of these teams. I know in this neck of the woods, you get a collective eye roll with the vast majority of the SEC programs who will open up with FCS programs, or we know the weekend before Thanksgiving is one of the worst, certainly in the Power Five. Where you're playing your directional schools basically there. For most of the major programs, but we try to tell people specifically about the group of 5 down here, because you mentioned it. Arkansas only has 2 FBS programs. There's 4 in the state of Georgia, and Georgia Southern and Georgia State are really trying to carve out that next rung there
Mhm.
up under the University of Georgia, who's kind of emerged as a national power, and then Georgia Tech, of course, who is trying to find their footing again. But they have. And their fans will tell UGA fans they can be the little brother, but they have more national championships. So that's it's always been a good battle between the trade school and that the school there in Athens. They're the smart kids, man. You got to watch out for Georgia Tech. They know the angles.
Yeah, I would want to. I wouldn't want to trade mental blows with Georgia Tech. Those guys could probably run mental circles around all of us. So
So here's something you said there, Ben, where you talked about, the flip side of that, the Georgia fans, the Bama fans aren't really excited when they have to play pretty much our schools for the homecoming game, the early season game. What are your thoughts of when Georgia State, when Arkansas State, we talked about South Alabama earlier, when they travel to the Floridas, the Florida States, the whoever's, do y'all kind of get excited for that game, or do y'all just kind of see like, oh, okay, our offensive line looks okay. This guy was pretty good as a receiver. This guy was a pretty good cover corner. Do y'all kind of take the individual approach, or do y'all look at the game as a whole?
Well, I know I can speak for me. Two years ago, 2019, to open the season, Georgia State probably shocked the college football world and went into Knoxville, Tennessee, and punched the Tennessee Vols in the mouth. And I was there live, seeing the game, and you talked to some of the Tennessee fans, and they didn't think they were going to win a single game, and they ended up going 8-5 and winning a bowl game before blowing Jeremy Pruitt out the following season. But I will say this, it used to be, where Sunbelt programs were cannon fodder for those big programs, the Power Five teams. But I think you're seeing Appalachian State, with two Power Five wins a couple of years ago, South Carolina and North Carolina. They've played teams close. You've seen, you mentioned South Alabama. Go and you've had teams go into LSU and like Troy go in and knock off LSU and LSU in recent memory. You have those games where I think it catches people's attention and they're paying attention and seeing how close they can be. But as somebody basically covered the team, you want to measure it up. You want to see, all right, are they able to hold water, against some of the best talent in the country? Hey, that's something that I'm looking forward to. Week 2 for Georgia State, they play North Carolina, potentially the number 1 quarterback in the country there in Sam Howell, seeing how their secondary holds up. As we know, there's offensive teams in the Sun Belt that can absolutely put it up, and there's some great quarterbacks in the league. What are they going to look like, with the guy? So I think you measure that. You see, okay, how does this talent measure up? Are you able to push guys off the ball? Are you getting blown off the ball? How's your front seven look? Is your secondary getting embarrassed? Things like that. But it's the league has certainly come a long way, and I think they're getting blown out less and less in those Power 5 payday games, and they're certainly being more respectable.
Yeah, what I always tell people too is, I'll get a little condescension every now and then. I remember we played Alabama a couple of years ago, and there was a lot of kind of sneering about that. But my point about, or at least my perspective on Sunbelt teams playing big Power 5 programs is that a Sunbelt team when it comes to the first squad, they'll match up just as well as anybody in college. It's when it starts getting the backup players or the too deep. When you're playing a team like Alabama, the third string guy is a 5-star player. So by the time you hit the second half, a group of 5 team is a lot of times just kind of gassed trying to keep up because they just don't have the backups to help them out. But in terms of Arkansas State, we've always looked at it as that it's the only thing that's acceptable in our minds is a win. And then the other thing that's acceptable is that our guys just don't get hurt. So, and I think that's kind of where the Sun Belt is in total. Like when I saw Georgia State beat Tennessee, I didn't look at that as, oh my God, what a huge upset for Georgia State. I looked at that as Georgia State was clearly the better team on the field. And what always frustrates me is the after analysis. It's always like, oh, Tennessee must have had a bad day, or they overlooked Georgia State, or, it was something went wrong with Tennessee. It wasn't the excellence of Georgia State. So I think that's the part that bugs me most about playing Power 5 teams, is that even when you win, you don't get the respect that you deserve.
Yeah, I agree.
You saw it just last year with App State beating Iowa State. They ended up in the year ranked behind them, and they beat them by double digits. I mean, that was a pretty sound victory there by the Cajuns, and yet they're still several spots behind them. It goes back to that, what ESPN, was saying, hey, you got to win multiple years when we know how these schedules are set out 4, 5, 6, 8 years in advance. Makes it difficult.
Well, guys, we finally made it. The first episode is in the books. What are your thoughts? You think this is going to be the sticking point and this will be the FunBelt podcast?
I don't see why the FunBelt podcast can't even get better. I'm hoping that we get a few guests on board to liven things up, and I definitely think that.
Are you saying we're not live enough for you?
I don't know. I think for now we seem to be, but we might get a little bored with each other by week 5, we'll certainly need some new blood to pump it up a little bit. But I'm really looking forward to this season. I feel like there's really a lot of compelling storylines this year, and I really am excited to see how they play out.
Yeah, I agree totally, and I think there's so many storylines to watch from the new coaches, as we mentioned, earlier, as well as can the top of the league, continue to show out? Is there going to be any teams that jump up and just shock us, like Coastal did last season? Is there somebody? We saw some close games and even games that went into overtime last season. Could that potentially shift the battle there in the East or the West? I'm looking forward to a huge September with a ton of name games in the league as well, and Dusty getting to have a chance to go see Coach Dion. Oops, don't call him Dion. You may get in trouble there, Dusty.
Oh no, we're gonna get canceled.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this season. I think that kind of the cliche for the G5 has always been who's going to be the next Boise State. And I think that last year we saw kind of a combination between Coastal Carolina and Louisiana Lafayette. They were the quote-unquote Boise State. And who's it going to be this year? And really, is it still that you're the Boise State if you are Coastal and Louisiana Lafayette doing the same things you did last year? To me, it almost then kind of shifts to who's going to be the Coastal, who's going to be the Louisiana Lafayette of next year. So with that said, parting shots, plugs, and promos. Ben, what you got?
Sounds good. Yeah, we're excited over here at 24/7 and PantherTalk.com specifically to carve out our niche and be the home of Georgia State. But we get a chance to flex our muscle here, obviously, on this podcast and talk a little Sun Belt. I'm very interested, and I'll say it already. Georgia State is going to perform a lot better and a lot stronger than folks are giving credit to them. And there's a lot of confidence, as you mentioned, out of Coach Sean Elliott and the awards. I know turned some heads there with 10 Sun Belt, preseason nominees, and honestly, there's a couple guys that would probably be on that list to potentially make an 11th or 12th. So there's a whole lot of things swirling here in Atlanta, trying to get some attention and grow the fan base, certainly, which has been a struggle. I think they have that opportunity to do it, and word on the street is their game against Army will be sold out, expecting nearly 25,000 there in Center Parc Stadium, formerly Olympic Stadium, of course, as the Olympics are taking place. So they're excited about it, excited to do that, and if you've ever seen a game either in person or on TV, they're looking to sound the train horn.
I just want to encourage everybody to check out the latest Hellraiser.com story, where I encourage Keith Gill. I implore him, I beseech him, reach out to the Big 12 and get those remaining guys into the Sun Belt, because they're without Texas and without Oklahoma. I don't know if they have much reason to exist. So they really need the Sun Belt to pull them up. And I also want to say that Arkansas State, for all of its sort of mystery surrounding its roster, I really do think maybe being ranked right behind Louisiana is right where they need to be. I think this might be a team that surprises a lot of guys. So we're really looking forward to the season, and I'm looking forward to covering them.
My promo, us. If you've got a small business, we're cheap. We need sponsorships to keep the podcast going for week 2 and beyond. We really want to try to get this going all the way through the New Year's Bowl games that I know that a Sunbelt team will be in. So definitely hit us up, funbeltpc@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter, funbeltpc. Other than that, I can't thank y'all enough. Looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great venture, and ready for episode 2.
Glad ForceFlex Max Strength now has bags with a 2-time stronger top for over-the-top strength, like the kind of over-the-top strength you need when, breaks your bowl of buffalo chicken dip. Glad ForceFlex Max Strength, strong enough for all of life's garbage. 2-time stronger top versus 13-gallon ForceFlex bags.